Hey, what is up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs, wherever you are in the world? I hope you are having an incredible day, and I'm so excited you're here for this show. If you are thinking of starting a company or you currently have a company, regardless of the size, you will either have to raise money at some point, unless you're fully bootstrapping, or you're going to want to get it sold. And this episode is for you. The founder I'm interviewing has an incredible track record. He comes out of Harvard, where he had two companies. One was acquired. Then he built another company called Quick Help that was acquired. And he is now building a new company that is disrupting the advertising world. It's crazy, using both generative AI and agentic AI. And in this episode, we are going to talk about pitching. He said close to 1,000, and after in the post show he said it was probably hundreds, but it felt like 1,000. What that feels like, and just having a thick skin, and even though he is a self-proclaimed introvert, how he got himself to become better at getting confident enough to go out there and raise money. He is an award-winning AI CEO. His company has been recognized by the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, and he's also humble and brilliant. And before we get into the show, I just want to share a couple of things. One is, I get asked all the time, Susan, what is your strategy in terms of networking and building relationships? And I see you on LinkedIn and you're everywhere. The first tip I want to give is that you have to say yes. I am naturally introverted, might surprise you. I'm a situational extrovert. So it takes a lot of energy for me to go out and network. But when I go out and network, I am very, very deliberate, and I never want to have an initial conversation with someone asking them for anything. And I get a lot of people that come up to me as an angel investor and they start to pitch me. They're not even like, "Hi, how are you?" or anything. They just start to tell me about their idea. And I would say, make sure you definitely warm people up with a conversation, figure out how to be memorable, and give more in that conversation than you're taking from it. And a strategy that I use all the time is I will send a card with a photo from meeting that person. And so what I do is I take the photo on my phone and I upload it into my promptings app. I get the person's address and I send them a note with our photo. And that has helped me close business deals. It's helped me build incredible relationships in the tech community. And with my new company, the pause.ai, because that was something I did and I was known for, when I launched that company, amazing people in the tech community reached out to support. And so I would just say, check it out. It's so affordable. It's an incredible service. So just go to susansly.com/shop and you will see promptings, and you can click on that link, and they have amazing packages for all budget levels. So check that out. And speaking of the pause.ai, it is a new app that our team has created using generative AI. We have an AI agent. Her name is Harmony. She's there to do your shopping list. She's there to give you workouts. She's there to be your coach, your companion. And we have a lot of fun features too. You can integrate your Apple Watch currently, and we have Oura Ring, Garmin, Fitbit on the way. And this app is going to save you time. It's going to save you money, and it's going to help you cut through the noise. And the app is created with the insight and advisement of our medical advisory board, who include incredible physicians, and some of them are board certified in menopause. One is an internist. They're all very focused on women's health. So check it out. Just go to www.thepause.ai. So with that, let's get into my interview with the founder and CEO of Omneky, Hikari Senju.
This is Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that brings the no-nonsense truth of what is required to start, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Susan Sly.
Hikari, welcome to the show. And for the listeners all over the world, we were having some friendly banter about Harvard and MIT prior to getting into this episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. And Hikari, I just want to jump right in. Every entrepreneur has an origin story. And can you recall the moment when you said, you know what, I'm psychologically unemployable. I need to be my own boss.
Gosh, yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for having me, Susan. I'm really, yeah, it's a great question. Well, from a very young age, I loved making things. I was a very creative kid. My dad's a painter, and so I grew up painting things, making architectural diagrams, programming websites. I really enjoyed the craft of creating things and sharing those experiences with others. And so, there's that kind of desire for creation. And then I think in terms of my kind of personality and being an entrepreneur. I mean, I think the first taste in entrepreneurship was actually in high school. I was working. My uncle had like a small startup in Tokyo, and I was interning at his startup, and that's where I got a taste of what it means to be like an entrepreneur in a startup environment with small teams, kind of focusing on customers and building feature sets for customers, and kind of really the camaraderie and excitement of that process was what really got me excited about entrepreneurship. I grew up in a family of technologists, so my grandfather worked at IBM, and he was always very much, worship, worship entrepreneurs, visionaries like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and he was always talking about, how these visionary leaders were creating new technologies and revolutionizing the world, and how entrepreneurship was always kind of at the cutting edge of societal change and technological disruption. And so I think it was really a confluence of those things that got me really excited. I started my first company in college. I studied, as you mentioned, at Harvard in computer science, and so I think there was kind of the getting into Harvard. You have this whole grind that's not kind of, it's a little bit more like standard in that you have to do well in your classes, you have to juggle all these extracurriculars, you have to win all these awards. But once I got into college, I had this sense of relief that I can now do whatever I want to do, and what I wanted to do was build great products. I've always wanted to build great products and create something, and be an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, very soon after getting to college, started participating in all the various entrepreneurial communities that was getting started up at Harvard. And then, yeah, I started my first company in college, and then starting my second company, which became a company that was acquired later.
What was the company you started in college? What was the business?
So there was two companies I started in college. And prior to that, I was doing various projects. I built a website to recommend clothes, based on kind of the meta tags of and that actually was using early AI recommender systems. My first company in college was with my roommate, which was like a friend meetup app. So you can kind of ping your friends and hang out in on demand. And yes, that was my first time. We went through an incubator in New York, and learned to pitch for investors, learned how to raise capital, learned how to build a prototype, and get initial customers signed up, and that was really great. Really great educational experience for me in terms of the particular flavor of entrepreneurship, which is kind of this tech VC product driven entrepreneurship, and then in community building entrepreneurship. And then I started a second company soon after that, which was in education, and it was like a personalized learning application. It was kind of Uber for tutors, is what we called it. And that did okay, and was ultimately acquired by another company. But throughout this all, I'm studying AI and computer science at Harvard. You're studying computer science. Even the hardest thing back then even was AI. Like that was everyone was saying that's the thing, and really groundbreaking things were happening. In the early 2010s, and prior, late 2000s regarding ImageNet and computer vision. You had a computer vision company as well, and so this space very well. And so it was a very exciting time also to be in AI. So I got really hooked into AI, and then I got really hooked into generative AI towards the latter end of college. That started becoming more of a thing, particularly because my dad's a painter, and so the idea of an AI being creative, I thought was so interesting, so exciting, and actually something that really gave me some, was like kind of a passion of my life. And so that that really got me kind of in, like deep into like the like kind of the rabbit hole, if you will, of just generative AI. And around 2015, 2016, you have Hugging Face comes out around that time period. They start off as like a AI chat app, but then now pivoted into this open source company. And so there started being a lot of these models available in open source. A lot of these weights are available open source. You have breakthroughs in computer vision around that time. You have Lee Sedol, and Go, AlphaGo, and so it just like 28, and then you have GPT one gets announced around 2018, and so I was running growth at the previous acquirer, but around 2018, I was like, this is the time. Like a lot of these things are coming together where it's time to start an AI company to disrupt advertising, and so that was kind of the impetus behind starting the company in 2018.
Well, and 2018 was such an interesting inflection point. To your point, Hikari, that's when we started the CV company, and like explaining what computer vision was. And even still, like I was at a mixer last night and people still are like, huh, what is that? And generative AI, to your point, started to get really exciting. And even if we look at the Q4 to Q1, what happened with OpenAI, doubling their paid subscribers and this democratization of AI and making it accessible for people listening all over the world, what are your, like, which of the off the shelf kind of accessible to all humankind Gen AI models do you think are the best right now, just given what's happened with DeepSeek and in just this disruption that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think Grok 3. I mean, we're talking February 21, so this may be different, and a week from now. But right now, last week, Grok 3 was announced, and they, kind of leader in all these benchmarks. I mean, I think there was an element though where there was a certain like gestation time or development time when it comes to building these models, and so the fresher the model, that it tends to outperform because they have access to all the latest tricks in terms of optimizing these transformers, and you also have access to more GPUs and figure out ways of utilizing more GPUs. And so you had DeepSeek was released, based on really the most recent kind of training set and techniques. And then you have Grok 3 now kind of outperform. And so as every company, then you're going to have Anthropic, and you're going to have Meta, Llama, and each of these companies are going to keep announcing new models, and they're going to probably keep beating the previous benchmarks just because the space is moving so rapidly. I think it's really hard to say. It's very dynamic. There isn't necessarily one clear leader in the space at the moment. And I think that's good because, I mean, number one, I think a lot of the development is done through open source. And that was kind of the impetus also behind Omneky was, we're an applications company. We weren't going to be like a research company. And even back in going back to the story of Hugging Face, like a lot of the AI advancements were being done in an open source way. And I think partly it's because research institutions have an incentive to kind of share their learnings, and researchers want to get credit for the innovations that they're doing. And I think it's just a very global talent pool as well working on this. And so there was just this kind of massive tidal wave of open source. And generally, there's more smart people, outside of one company than there is inside a given company. And so it just creates a very dynamic environment. So that's why I felt like there was an opportunity in terms of building value on the application layer. Mm-hmm. Particularly related to advertising, than it was necessarily innovating on the model layer. But because the open source community is so vibrant, I'm gonna and they're all kind of stealing from each other as well, every single model. And so I'm going to continue to say it's going to continue to be a kind of open space. I mean, you have companies come out of nowhere right now. Like no one would have mentioned Grok 3 or DeepSeek, even 6 months ago. Like they were not on anyone's radar, and now they're suddenly like the top performing models. So it just goes to show how open this competition is, and how new entrants can emerge out of anywhere.
Well, and I love that perspective, Hikari, because we're going to talk about the company you're building now, and the message, and I know you know this, but at MIT Sloan, we're taught get your MMP out the door, use as much off the shelf as you can, spend the least amount of money, and now with the accessibility open source, off the shelf models that can be customized. I mean, you don't have to spend, like, 20, 30 million dollars to get an MMP stood up, depending on what you're doing, right? Like, and the thing I love about that community is it's fun, it's collaborative. To your point, it's very competitive. And my joke internally with our team is there's a library for that. Oh, we want to put a feature in, there's a library for that. Like,
Yeah.
just go and there's a library for that, right?
Mm.
Whatever it is, which is fantastic. How I want to go back to what you said about the incubator, learning how to pitch, learning how to go find customers. Were you naturally extroverted and confident in front of people, or was that something you had to learn?
Yeah. So I was in high school. I was student council president, class president every year from sixth grade till 12th grade. So I was that kid that just basically won re-election every year. And there was one year actually where they kind of barred me from running, just to give somebody else a chance. But then the year after, I was back. I was back. And so because of that, I have just like a practice public speaking since I was like an early teenager. Basically every since I was a teenager, basically every quarter I'm out there speaking in front of the student body, giving a presentation, running for election, again giving a speech, trying to make it engaging and interesting. And so I think I developed a certain. I don't think it's necessarily extroversion because I'm not extroverted. I'm a very introverted person. But in terms of at least public speaking, it's one of the biggest fears that people have. But for me, just because I was starting doing it at such an early age, by being the student body president, that I just am not as phased by it. And so when it comes to things like pitching, speaking at an event, I'm not as I'm a bit more relaxed, I think, in that regards. And it's I think partly because these very formidable experiences I had earlier on, kind of practicing that.
I was thinking about the student body president. My youngest daughter and I are on a Young Sheldon marathon. So we're watching about 3 episodes a night. And he runs for, have you ever seen
I've
Young
seen
Sheldon?
yeah.
Yeah. So he's, he runs for president and just so I can see you as this young genius.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't, thank you. I think I was just that kid that people didn't hate the most, because like at some point there is an element where it's just like the person who like pisses off the least people win. So like you can have somebody who's really popular and very outgoing and very gregarious, but teenagers are also very like a little bit toxic and, and like they like sniping each other, and so it's the one that's most like not threatening in some ways, that isn't gonna threaten their status or whatever, is the one that everyone can kind of agree can, be this role. So I think, it's I think partly because I was introverted and kind of a nerdy guy but also kind of not the most, in your face and not the most gregarious, and that like, it's a combination of those things. I think kind of, people were okay with me being president.
We had Hikari, we had a founder on who's had a couple of exits, but he talked about being naturally introverted and he had to train himself to be a situational extrovert. And I'm a situational extrovert. Even if I go to a mixer or something, I can, work the room, do all the stuff, but I have to come back and just sit by myself and not talk to humans. Right. And what do you do as a natural introvert who has to be a situational extrovert? Because we're always raising money, we're always pitching, we're always meeting people for M&A, because we don't build companies anymore to give them to our children and grandchildren. We want to build it, sell it, or IPO it, or whatever. Think about the people listening to this right now. Maybe there's some engineers at companies you and I do business with that are like, I'd love to start a business, I'm such an introvert. What tips would you give that person to? Go ahead.
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, number one, I would say, I mean, to your point, especially in technology, the space is so vibrant that it's very hard, I think, to build any, lasting value is just really hard. And especially the world's getting more competitive, like the lifespan of these Fortune 100 companies is shrinking every single year. So that, it's, you have to hustle. But like regarding the introvert, what I would say is actually the environment has never been better for introverts, because today you don't need to go and speak in front of hundreds of people or thousands of people and go shake hands with hundreds or 200 people. You can, a lot of this is online. It's all disintermediate. You just, you can write a really great blog post, and you can be active on social media. Those aren't necessarily things that benefit the extrovert in the kind of classical way that we imagine, being kind of very present physically and kind of being physically, emotionally intelligent, but it's actually being more intelligent tactically online. To kind of maximize your presence online is, I think, maybe actually something that favors introverts potentially, or definitely it's not a disadvantage necessarily being an introvert when the medium that you're communicating is infinite and zero cost and scalable and not face to face. So I think in some ways the balance has shifted from extroverts to introverts. I mean, nothing is scarier than that introvert who's on Slack typing these massive messages, just tearing down certain ideas or whatnot, right? I mean, they would never be like this in an office, but like there's an element where if it's on Slack and it's not personal, then it's just things like people can be very very direct, and so or definitely different elements of the personality get revealed, and so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say that just find the medium that you're comfortable in, and I think, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to necessarily. I mean, there's many different ways of raising money. I think one, it definitely, like in person matters. In person creates the most trust, and there's a psychological benefit of meeting people in person and trusting somebody in person. But at the same time, you can build trust online too. You can direct message people on X and develop a following, and and kind of become an expert in a certain area, and kind of build that brand for yourself and build a community around yourself. So I think it's ultimately just playing to your strengths and and like figuring out, this is my strength, and so I'm going to play to that. Maybe you're better in person, so it's all about going to these events and meeting people and shaking hands and rubbing elbows, or maybe it's you don't go to any events, but you're just online all the time, and and you develop a community that way. And so I think there are many paths.
I love that. I think that's incredible wisdom. It's playing to the strengths. I think at the end of the day, it depends on who you are. If you're a second time founder, you've already had an exit and you've had multiple companies, so you've got a bit of a cachet to, let's say, as opposed to a first time founder who is an unknown commodity, right? Has 5 followers on X or whatever. I would say go do the thing that scares you. Go to a mixer, go to a workshop to teach you how to public speak, get that, confidence in order to portray yourself, because you're going to have to pitch more than anyone else. You're going to have to put yourself out there more than anyone else until you get that reputation.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean, there at a certain level or at a certain scale or a certain size, you do need to be a chief salesperson. Even if you started off as an engineer or technologist, you need to learn those skills. And so like at some point, like you do need to, I mean, even just to be a good manager, you have to be good. You have to be an emotionally intelligent person who's good at communicating clearly, and instilling trust and understanding people's, motivating people, learning how to motivate people, and create an environment that is conducive and productive, and and creating a culture that is positive. And so like all these things, you do need to eventually do.
Yeah.
That introvert, though, when he or she is starting and maybe built, I mean, I think several things. First of all, if you've built something very valuable, like information, like the internet, they kind of lowers the barriers so that like that information gets communicated very quickly. So if you do build something valuable, if you post in the right, maybe it's the right Reddit sub channel, maybe it's the right community in some online forum, but if you built a really cool thing and you share it with a community that cares about it, then I think you can get some initial traction, even if you're not the best public speaker or the best salesperson. I think, once you get funding or, once you start, hiring people and then you're trying to raise more money and all these things, and yeah, eventually you do need to gain these other skills. But to get that kind of initial traction, it's more about finding your community. It's product market fit. So finding the market that it likes your will resonate with your product, and building a great product of some form that can get them excited.
Yeah, and I love too that thinking about that founders come from many different backgrounds. We have founders who are not technologists who stand up technology companies because they get a co-founder who's a technologist, or the person who's a technologist doesn't know how to sell, brings in the person, and that's their skill set. I want to ask you that I love a good acquisition story. And how did your previous company get acquired? And on the show, we've heard everything from I got one of those emails. I was on someone's CRM list to acquired by a large company out of the blue. How did that take place?
Yeah, I was raising money, and one of the people that I was speaking to in the context of raising money was a competitor, and we met, and we like kind of aligned and realized that like there was a lot I could learn from this person, and and just figure out a series of terms and deal terms that would work for both of us. And so that was kind of the path. I think it's interesting, ultimately to be acquired, you have to build something valuable, and to build something valuable, the goal can't necessarily be acquisition. It has to be like that, you're building the thing, because nobody wants to buy something that's like, if you're like desperate to sell the company, it's not very enticing to buy the company. So you do need to build a product and build a business that is compelling and valuable in its own right, or at least become a person or build a team that is acquire worthy. And that usually is not necessarily the goal as acquisition. But at the same time, and this is kind of a bit more separate, but I think venture capitalists do invest in companies in which the outcome they expect is an acquisition, because they're very connected to the BD and R&D teams of these big tech companies. They know the kind of research that the BD and R&D teams are doing at these big companies, and they know that if there was a compelling product in the space, that it would be a very good acquisition potential for these big companies. So, I think you could start a company with a goal of being acquired and just kind of focus on that. Ultimately, I think, to your point, entrepreneurs come in all different shapes and sizes with all kinds of skills. And so there isn't necessarily a playbook for this, I think.
Yeah. And so you end up pitching your competitor.
Yeah.
I need to know, how did that happen? Because some people, Hikari, look at a competitor as, I never am going to breathe the same air. I'm not going to be within 6 feet of that person. How did you end up pitching your competitor?
There's this great quote by, I think it was John Doerr, who said like, no conflict, no interest. And so if there isn't a conflict of interest, if there isn't some kind of conflict, there isn't interest. And so the companies that are going to be most interested in acquiring you are going to be some people with some kind of, conflict of interest, because they're building something internally that competes with you, or they're trying to build something internally that competes with you, because you threaten their core business, because they're trying, they're looking to augment their core business, or augment some strategic thing. And so, like, the most likely the acquirer is, again, I think it depends on the type of acquisition. If it's just pure acqui-hire and actually they don't care about the product, maybe it's something else. But these product acquisitions, or these kind of, is usually because of some kind of conflict or conflicting or competitive dynamic, I think. And so, yeah, I think for me, reaching out to competitors, I think there's an element where, when I was raising money, I was also just, willing to talk to anyone really, and this person took me. So, like, there was an element there as well. But I think, competitors also kind of have a better understanding of kind of grokking your business, which makes it easier for them to value it more properly.
Yeah, well, I'm going to adopt that strategy. Thank you for that. Have you ever been rejected by a VC, or just gotten that? What's that?
It's like for every success, there's like 99 rejections. Absolutely.
So how many? So I love to ask this question, because there's so many founders who take it really personally. VCs only say about 3 different things. It's kind of like being rejected for dating. It's not you, it's us. It doesn't fit with our, investment ethos, or it's not never, it's just not now. Like, it's just all this stuff, right? But on how many pitches do you estimate you've done, and in order to get funded? Because this is raw and real entrepreneurship, and that's why I
Oh my
love
God.
people giving the real numbers.
I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for, a decade
Mhm.
plus. I've pitched by hundreds, maybe close to 1,000 investors. Um, it's yeah, like I think raising money is hard. There's a lot of trust that's required for someone to send you cash.
Mhm.
Um, it's not like a thing that people just do. I mean, for example, I think interviewing for jobs is hard. And there's a certain rejection right there, and you just have to keep applying until you get a job. I mean, I think raising money is potentially even harder, because the investment is not just for a certain period of time, but it's really a long duration, and you're not going to get your money back for some time. And so it requires a lot of trust, and it takes time to build that trust. Um, and it takes time also to build a reputation as somebody that is expert in a certain space. Um, I think that said, though, that's one of the strengths of Silicon Valley, is that Silicon Valley is willing to take risks on unknowns. That like really complete unknowns, and so like that's I think the strength of Silicon Valley. It's like they and also I think there's just such a deep network effect that exists in
Mhm.
Silicon Valley, in terms of kind of it's a valley that's running on gossip, that people can get trust quickly, even if there's tends to be fewer signals. Just because if enough people around this person has such high conviction on this person, then maybe that's some kind of signal. And so I think if you're an entrepreneur that's just starting out, I mean, I would definitely suggest coming to Silicon Valley, and networking here, and building products here, and building community here, and just, or whatever way, maybe it's initially getting a job here, but like whatever it is, plugging into this network, because um, this is a space that uh, knows how to pull these signals from very potential limited amounts of information. That, or I mean, you just hustle and you build a compelling business, in a space far away from Silicon Valley, but you just hustle and you figure out the right kind of economics that work, and you start making money online, and you build a business, and you can do that from anywhere. You can do that from anywhere on the planet. You can do that from Atlassian's from Australia, and Shopify's from Canada. So as long as you can build a business that is uh, makes money, and like that can work as well. So I think there's many different paths, and ultimately it's also your preference in terms of what kind of entrepreneur you want to be. Some people don't want to raise money, and they just want to have a business that they own and control, and don't really um, report to anyone other than themselves and their co-founder. And I think that's great. And again, massive companies have been built like this. Or maybe you kind of bootstrap initially, and then you get to a certain point that's a breakout point, and then at that point, venture capital starts to come to you, and then you raise money that way. So, yeah, I think there's different. Yeah, and I think ultimately it's also just finding the right investor, right? To your point, to your kind of analogy of dating, is you have to find the right investor that's kind of looking for, open to investing in something like this. And sometimes it takes some time.
Yeah, not all capital is created equal, right?
That's true.
We're very, I haven't pitched 1,000, but couple hundred, and we're very discerning, Hikari, about who we will let invest in our pre-seed round. The people had to bring something to the table. We rejected investors, so they had to either have some skills they could loan to us, or a big network of people in the space that we're playing in, right, which is women's health. So I think that my advice for everyone listening is take a page from Hikari's playbook, which is you might have to pitch 1,000, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not sure if it probably isn't exactly 1,000 to your point. Maybe it's in the hundreds, but like, yeah, it is a lot. And Yeah, I think the other point is absolutely like you want to be discerning with investors. All our investors in Omneky are strategic investors. They're either experts in Gen AI, or they're SaaS investors, or they're investors in go to market and advertising, and so or they work in advertising. Strategic investors, especially almost all our early investors were like this, because yeah, absolutely, like bringing on board the wrong investor can ruin your life for sure. So you gotta be very careful.
Yeah, it's like marrying the wrong person. So here you are, serial entrepreneur, and you start Omneky. And I love your video, the demo video. I was watching that on YouTube before the show. And we started this discussion about accessible AI, and your tooling is so accessible. What I want to know is this, you know, it feels to me when I'm having this interview with you, looking at your life's work and your career, it kind of like this is an opus of everything you've learned so far. But how did you get this idea that there's a problem I want to solve?
Yeah. Well, I think when you're looking for good ideas, you're thinking of what kind of technological change is going to create leverage that makes something 10 times better.
Yeah.
Because people aren't going to switch over to a new product unless it's 10 times better than the existing thing. And so I was very passionate about generative AI. And I think, when I was thinking of ideas in the space, creative, I always get very excited about generative art is something particularly I got very excited about towards the end of college and post college, and so that was partly I think it was just passionate for the technology, which is literally generative art and generative AI. But separately, was thinking, okay, well, I'm passionate about this technology. What are the areas that it's going to disrupt? And I think advertising is one of the most applicable areas for creative. It's probably the largest industry for artists in many ways. My dad's an artist, and he makes money. I've seen him make ads, and so like it was very much like, well, advertising is $1 trillion industry. It's the biggest application for art. I think there's a big intersection between art and advertising. When you think of Andy Warhol and his Campbell's soup cans and his silk prints, and so there's an element where I was passionate about technology, and through that passion thought of a space, and that was advertising. I think several other things is you want to find something that you're passionate about. You want to find something that you're the best at or you're the expert at, and that's because it's entrepreneurship is really hard, and you're going to give up if you're not passionate about it. And so you have to find some calling that is like, even if you're making no money. And Omneky was bootstrapped for the first couple of years. I was like literally going to events for food. Like I was going to like tech networking events to eat muffins there because that was my meal for the day kind of situation. And so the passion has to be that deep, I think, in terms of the thing that you're working on. So you don't give up, because I think the difference between people who fail and people who succeed, or people who succeed are the ones who didn't give up. And so you have to find something about that, but they also you have to find something you're good at and something that you can ideally make money in.
And those muffins, sometimes they're not the best.
Oh, they're stale. They're a little bit, they've been around for a little bit.
And when I look at Omneky too, going back to accessibility, right? My vision, like what we're building at the Pause, is accessible menopause support globally, right? It's such it's a big problem to solve, but 1.1 billion women will be in menopause globally by 2030. I mean, it's crazy. 25% of the whole country of Canada is in menopause, 50 million women in the US, right? So it's like, how do we disrupt that and make it accessible? And I was looking at Omneky, like small business accessibility, solopreneur accessibility, you have some huge clients, but to be able to, like with the $20 a month subscription, just to be able to get in there and get the data to be able to optimize what you're doing on these different platforms, which is really cool. Did you start with that in mind, or were you thinking bigger customers first? Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky that the first customers were mid-sized companies. So these were companies that had been you could be just being in Silicon Valley. I was very lucky, got early investments from a fund called Village Global. They were kind of a day one investor in us.
Yeah.
They have a very strong network of people in the community, and I think a large part of Silicon Valley is sales and marketing. I think that's a big differentiator between successful products and non-successful products. And so there's a large community of growth marketers and who work at these companies, these high growth startups. And so it was really initially our initial market was growth marketers at high growth startups. They have a lot of data. They're running A/B tests all the time in terms of the creative. They're changing the different order of the elements in the video. It's like if the glass is this angle, does it have higher click rates? And if it's like slightly askew, like it's they're testing all these different dimensions, different messaging, and so that was my initial customer base. Actually, were these like growth marketers at Silicon Valley startups. Then, since then we've expanded to more small businesses, e-commerce companies, D2C companies. Many of these initial customers were also like high growth D2C companies, and then now also doing we have some enterprise customers. We have some other industries that we service, but it was, I would say, high growth startups was kind of our initial customer base.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, the whole subscription model to be able to, I mean, we've been doing it in SaaS for a long time, but I mean, it goes back way even further, like newspapers and things like that. But that, from building a startup, this is what the VCs want to see. What is your MRR? What is your ARR? And just for people who don't know, who are listening in our global audience. So I thought that was, a really smart move to have the tiered. And final question for you is, and for everyone, any business owner listening, which is all of you, check out Omneky. We'll put it in the show notes, the link, and Hikari's socials. What's next for the company? You want to disrupt. There's a lot of room to disrupt, but it's still, AI and advertising could be a red ocean. Where are you going to claim your piece of the blue ocean?
Yeah. Well, so we've spent the past several years building a workflow product. So a tool for getting insights from your ad creative, from your omni-channel ad channel. So marketers today, they have to balance the budgets of maybe half a dozen ad platforms at least. Mm-hmm. And so getting insights, omni-channel insights, generating ideas, generating the content, and scaling that content. So for different platforms require different dimensions. Also, you have different SKUs. You need to create content for those different SKUs, and then the approval process as well, because there's definitely different stakeholders involved in terms of getting the creative approved. And so we built that workflow. Now we have an AI agent that will automate the workflow, and so we'll do all that for you. So we built the workflow. We have people using the workflow, customers, making it better, learning all the edge cases, making it as seamless as possible. And at some point, probably in 2015, the person is going to be replaced by an AI that just does it for you and is working 24/7, getting insights, generating ideas, sending them for approval, creating variations, and launching them on your behalf. And that's really been the vision of the company. Even when I started the company back in 2018, generate personalized ads at scale. This idea of an AI optimizing ads autonomously, 24/7 for you was the vision. I think technologically, 2018, it wasn't there. Mm-hmm. But kind of understanding Moore's law, felt that was the direction technology was going. And now in 2025, I think we're finally at that point where that is, feasible. And so that's really the area that we're sprinting towards.
Yeah, I love that you brought up AI agents, agentic AI. I was speaking at CES on agentic AI, and we had our Hikari. It was standing room only, And I'm co-chairing. This will be the largest agentic AI conference in the U.S. in Washington. This in Q4. I have to think, or Q3. But anyway, the agentic AI is, what we're all talking about. But those of us in AI were talking about it a few years ago and, back in 2018. But to your point, the AI infrastructure wasn't necessarily accessible, but now it is. And so I think it's really exciting time. Okay, I'm going to ask you a random question that I asked some of my friends at CES. Would you get a Neuralink, yes or no, and why?
I mean, look, today I would say, like, unless I was in an accident or something, I wouldn't get it, because I think there's an element where, well, I think it's very exciting technology. So like today, if you're paraplegic, you can use it, and you can use it faster than potentially your hand. You can play video games potentially more effectively than you can with your hand. Maybe if I was a professional video game, maybe if I'm, in some kind of industry that requires high precision, quick reaction, guidance of a robot. Or of a machine or of a drone, maybe Neuralink makes a lot of sense there, right? It's because it's just more faster than with hands. But I think for me, technology improves exponentially, and so like, would I want to have iPhone 3 stuck in my head, and have to replace every year and go and get surgery to get this upgraded? Probably not that fun. So I think unless I needed to, I wouldn't. But there are clearly applications of it that are very exciting. When it comes to, say, the guidance of drones or something that's in a very, or also again, if you're ill and it can really change your life for the better. So I think there's I think it's very exciting technology, but I don't know if I'll get it yet. I mean, for me at least, in the work that I do, we do have a Neuralink already, and it's called your eyeballs, and the eyeballs, third of your brain is geared around the information through your eyes, and the iPhone is in many ways an extension, an augmentation device. And like your voice and your thumbs is, not as efficient communicator of information as maybe a direct connection to your brain, but sufficient at least for, the competitive environment today. But who knows, maybe, if every founder starts getting Neuralinks and they're like, commanding huge drones of AI agents on their behalf, like maybe just every entrepreneur will have to plug into the matrix that way.
Yeah, and then we'll all have the Optimus robots, and we'll command them with our Neuralink, and that's a whole interesting future. In the meantime, you and I will just build life-changing technology. And take a sideline. Hikari, I just congratulations on everything you're doing. And to everyone listening, one of the big things I want you all to take away is Hikari's heart. This is not someone who just came out of the womb and suddenly, created successful companies. He's had to obviously learn a lot, develop a thick skin, be creative, be scrappy, eat the rotten muffins, and and I think honestly, Hikari, you're doing it in record time, and it's going to be so fun to see how you scale this company.
Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you, and thank you so much. I'm also really impressed. You're doing amazing, and so it's really exciting. So. Right back at you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, for everyone listening, Hikari and I would love a 5-star review. Share the show. Give us a great review if you learned something. Drop a comment. I read all your comments online. Tag us on social. And I look forward to seeing you in another episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.